Thank you for coming, ladies and gentlemen. This is Carlos Phoenix with the Artist Alley Show. And today we have special guest, Kirk Lindo from LUXURA. And we've interviewed him before, and now he's agreed to return again because I didn't torture him enough. And so, we're going to be here talking about a project that he's very aggressive with. And I've seen a lot of the stuff that they've been putting together, and it looks like it's going to be a great comic novella. And so, Kirk, thank you for coming on to Blab and doing a live show with me.
My pleasure. Good to see you again, Carlos.
Yeah. So the last show we did, a lot of people were calling you the voice. It took away my thunder, but that's cool. I'm not a problem with that.
Okay.
Yeah, you got that voice.
That's the only other thing I've ever gotten consistently throughout my life. People like, hey, you should do radio. You should really do radio. So I get it all the time. Carl Waller, one of the artists who is one of the contributing artists to the Monsters Gauntlet, he's always razzing me about my voice. I think he likes it, which is why he keeps.
Well, yeah, that's usually the case. So cool. Let's just give the audience a little bit of a background as to one, who you are, and two, your character and what you'd be most recognized for. So if you could touch upon that a little bit.
Okay. Well, I am Kirk Lindo, obviously. And I'm best known as the creator and publisher of a comic character by the name of the VAMPRESS LUXURA. And it's a character that I created and first published back in around 1994. And she originally appeared in my original vampire anthology, Vampirotica. And wasn't soon after we published a few issues that it was pretty apparent that LUXURA was really something that kind of captured people's attention. So we ended up publishing about 50 issues of Vampirotica with LUXURA as the star. And that's the main thing. I'm an artist, a writer, a publisher. That character is the one that I've been able to create that has really captured people's attention and imaginations. And I took a break from comics for a while, but sometime a few years ago, I came back in thanks to Kickstarter. And I was actually out of comics for about 10 years, I'd like to say. And then I tried a Kickstarter, and the first one I did was successful. Then the second, the third, and a lot of existing LUXURA fans came back to support the character. And we started to get a lot of new fans as well. So
that's very cool.
Yeah, a lot of fun.
Now, you're an independent, so a lot of people recognize comic book characters, from Marvel and DC, and that's a big thing now, especially with movies.
Yes.
Now, as an independent, obviously that has its own level of difficulty. When you started, how big was the staff, if there was even a staff?
The staff. When I started was me and a loan from my wife. That was the staff. And after that, what happened is I'll tell you a funny story. When I first started publishing, we put out a couple of books here or there. Also, my good friend, Scott Harrison, who he worked with me when I was working before starting my own business with Personality Comics. He and I were kind of the two that kind of, started to do the comics. We were going along and they were doing okay. We were getting a few decent sales. But then when the Vampirotica #1 came out is when that one really sold a lot. And I remember calling my wife at work, and I was like, hey, listen, you need to quit your job because I need you to come and work with me in the business. She's like, seriously? He's like, yeah, seriously. You should see how many of these books we sold. We now work together. So we started that. Our in-house staff grew to about, we had a small office, it was about 5 people. It was myself, my wife, Scott Harrison, and 2 other full-time, no, it was about 5.5, yeah, 2 other full-time people and then 1 part-time person at the height. But then on top of that is we had dozens and dozens of freelancers that we worked with around the country. And it was a lot of work, a lot of very early mornings, a lot of very late nights. And but it was very good because at that time in the 1990s, the distribution system for comics was very friendly to independents. So it was, we had some good success. We had some good books. People liked them. We tried to be very, very good to our fans and customers. And, ultimately it paid off because they've come back, quite a lot of them these many years later.
Great. Now, you were writing and doing the artwork. Is that right?
Yes, I was writing and doing the artwork. What happens is the original anthology comic was made up of like 3 different stories. So I would do one, and then 2 people, 2 other artists would do another. We would have 3 stories. Usually I would do one, which with my duties as publisher, guy who vacuums at the end of the day, take out the garbage, pack the books, ship the books. Yeah, right. That was about the majority of what I could really handle. Especially my work is really detailed. So I would do, roughly about an 8-page story plus the cover. And then as we grew and got bigger, I was able to hire more artists to do it. But what I did, though, story-wise, I was always very kind of meticulous about the stories that we did. We put out a ads for freelancers, and writers would send in suggestions for stories. So we created a writer's guidelines. And what I did with the writer's guidelines was I told all the writers is the first thing that you would send us would be a 1-page synopsis. If you can't communicate the idea of your story within 1 page, then 10 pages is not going to be able to communicate it either. So it would really force the writers to get it down into that. So I would read literally every single synopsis for a story that would come into the office. And if they were good, if they had a little bit something to them, then I would contact the writer and like, hey, here's what we can do with that. Give them suggestions. Sometimes I'd give us a lot of suggestions. Other times I didn't have to give any. Some writers would do some really good stories. But I remember even back then, I wanted to kind of stretch what was being done with the vampire genre. Because all of the stories were pretty, simple in those days. There wasn't a lot of diversity. But the thing that I tried to get across to the writers was, especially when they were writing a LUXURA stories, that you can pick any time period, Egyptian time. You can do, all sorts of stories, the Old West.
It's like a vampire Indiana Jones.
Exactly. Indiana Jones. Right. All those types of things. I would kind of push some of the people who were involved to kind of, expand your horizons a little bit, let your imagination run wild. And let's do some stories. And we've done all kinds of stories. There is probably about, 100, 200 separate vampire stories that we've done. And to me, it was like Twilight Zone, but, with vampires. So we did all sorts of stuff. And it's particularly with the LUXURA stories, we would have LUXURA meeting historical figures like Galileo, or, an old pharaoh of Egypt and things like that. So it was made for some really, really fun and interesting stories.
That's very cool. Now, you chose a female character. Now, at the time, and I think we've discussed this before.
The phone is ringing.
Oh, sorry about that. Yes,
that's pretty funny.
And that's my ringtone. My apologies. So now I lost my train of thought. You've chose a female character.
Yes.
Now, at the time, male comic book characters were like the thing. They were like the big thing.
Yes.
What made you choose a female as opposed to like a male vampire?
At the time, it wasn't so much of a conscious choice, but being an older person now and looking back on myself and looking how I came up, for me, it was a combination of 2 things. Number one, I was raised by very strong females. My wife is a very strong female. These are, my mother, my aunts, these are very tough, fair, commanding ladies. And even when I, in the workplace before I got into comics, my first full-time job that I had outside when I got out of college, I worked for a woman's shoe store. And my boss was a lady. She was a Filipino lady, about 5 foot tall, tough as nails. I mean, it kept everybody in line and was just a thrill to work for because she wanted you to give your best and wouldn't take anything less, or you just didn't work for her. And that scenario kind of permeated throughout my life, which even looking back at it now, I didn't even really realize consciously. So when I've created several different types of characters, but when I made the LUXURA character, it was also at a time where, this is around 1993 when this was coming together. You know, one of the really popular movies at that time was Terminator 2. And, you know, there was Sarah Connor. And before that, there was also Ripley from the Alien movies. So, you know, strong lead female characters in entertainment and as well as my personal life was something that made sense to me, you know, kind of, I guess, made me feel comfortable. It was something that, yeah, I can get into. I have no problem putting this female character in complete charge, running everything, telling everyone exactly what they should be doing, seeing a vision for what she wants to do and executing that vision. So, you know,
it wasn't a motherly thing. It was these other people in your life that.
Yeah, there were a lot of them. There were a lot of them. There, you know, several women that I've known and grown up, good friends of mine. You know, all of these were types of people who, you know, you would admire. You know, my mother was tough, man. It was like when she came home after work at night, my homework has to be out on the kitchen table for her to look over. Now, if she had to go shopping after that, in she comes, here's my homework. And my aunts were the same way. You know, it's like, you know, if my mother was doing something, I'd try to go to one of my aunts to complain about it. You know, they'd be like, forget about it. You're not going to work here. Do what your mother says. You know, it was so, you know, strong female characters was something that I think a lot of guys of my generation, and then around the 90s, when we were getting started in comics and wanted to do our own stories, you know, we saw a lot of those type of women in entertainment and as well as our personal lives. So it wasn't a stretch for us to do, to do things like that.
Well, it was needed also in the comic industry.
Yeah, it was definitely.
And it started like a whole new genre at that time. You know, like we mentioned before, Razor and She and all these other female characters that really became big. Okay, so now, so eventually something occurred in the industry. You left it. If you want to elaborate, that's fine. If not, that's fine. And then you said 10 years has passed, and now we're here on this project. So let's elaborate as to what kind of inspired you to go after that.
What, you want me to talk about leaving, or you want to talk about the project now? Either one. Okay. Well, basically, what happened is, which you and I touched on in the previous interview, which I'll just touch on it a little bit. But if any of you out there want to really see it, just go to theloungenetwork.com. That's a plug for you there.
Thank you.
And watch the interview that we did, because I speak a little bit at length at something that went on. But I left the industry basically because of market forces. The environment in the comic industry became almost downright hostile to small publishers, and became dominated by the larger publishers, and myself and several other people who were individuals a little bit, you know, outside of the norm, not doing what the mainstream was doing, also left. But what happened is, fast forward, we came in thanks to Kickstarter, which is a great platform for independent publishers that are doing something that are a little bit different, that can find their own audience, connect with their audience. And also, one thing about Kickstarter is Kickstarter offers you a level of connection with your audience that you can't get through the mainstream comic distribution channel. You know, we fulfill all of our orders for all of our fans, friends, and customers. And if someone has a problem with someone, they can just shoot me a message. Hey, Kirk, did my package go out yet? And, you know, 24 hours or less, I'll hit them back and say, hey, it's either out, it's getting ready to come out, you know, this is going in it. And it's not so overwhelming where you can't, you know, keep a connection with the fans and let them know that there's a real live person who cares about the product that they're making and delivering it to them. But getting to this project, which is the Vampiress LUXURA, the Monsters Gauntlet. Well, I'll tell you how it came about. It came about because of David Hayes. He's the main writer. I'm kind of the co-writer of it, in that he'll write things and then I'll look at it and say, well, no, we got to change this, we got to change that, and so forth. And David Hayes came to me with the idea for the Monsters Gauntlet, which his idea was that LUXURA is the queen of New York. And for those of you who are not familiar with New York, there's something in the New York area called the 5 boroughs, which is Manhattan, Staten Island, Queens, Brooklyn, and the Bronx. So the idea that David came up with was that each one of these different boroughs was actually ruled by, a classic monster. Manhattan's ruled by the vampires, Staten Island by the amphibians, or what we would know as creatures from the Black Lagoon. Queens is run by the Frankenstein, which they're called the Made Men, which is a little, take of on. And they're like kind of my daughter calls them gangster steins, is pretty much what they are.
I like that.
And and what happens is LUXURA kind of rules New York. In the past, she established something called a gauntlet, where each borough has a duke that runs the borough. And if someone calls the gauntlet, then whoever the gauntlet is called against has to battle the champion in each one of the boroughs. So LUXURA finds herself, even being the one who set it up, is she has to battle through it because the gauntlet is called against her. So what she does is she traveled to each borough, the werewolves, the zombies, the amphibians, and the Made Men, the Frankenstein monsters, and she has to battle the champion in each borough to maintain her queendom over New York. So just visually the story is just gripping, even to read. But what happened was David wrote it as a novella, which, for those of you who don't know what a novella is longer than a short story, but shorter than a full, complete novel. So it's a short, fun, intense read. And it's very different from anything that I've published before, because it's not a straight comic book, so to speak, but it has the prose story, but then it has illustrations in each chapter. So what happened is David and I have been going back and forth with this thing for a couple of years now. And he can't be with us tonight because he's on a plane somewhere, but he would have loved to. But the story got written, it got finished up, and I read it, and I was like, man, this is really good. At one point, I wanted to turn it into a regular graphic novel, but it read so well in the prose form that I said, you know what? We're just going to go ahead, give it a shot. We're going to put it out there as it was written in that form. And I figured, well, the best way to kind of get attention on this is to contact a bunch of artists that I know or have worked with in the past and ask them, would they do some illustrations for it? And just about everybody that I asked, they were like, oh yeah, I'm in. Yeah, I'll do it.
I didn't get that phone call, but that's a discussion for another time. Now we are showing some of that artwork below. We're showing some. All
right. Below. We'll be doing another one. So I'll give you a holler.
All right, cool. And so the artwork below is showing some of the artists who are participating in your Kickstarter.
Yes.
And now I don't know if any are here, but if they are, I'm more than happy to bring them onto the show.
I don't know. It's tough to get artists all together in one place if it's not.
Heidi will let me know if they are.
Okay. All right.
Okay. So now, was there any for these artists that are participating in your Kickstarter? What did you give them any particular instructions, or was it just like, hey, just be something creative?
The only thing that we did in the beginning was some of the artists created the designs for some of the monsters. That was about it. I was very general in instructions. I wanted it to be fun. I wanted to kind of let their creativity run wild. That's what I like to do whenever I do any freelance work for people. If they kind of let me do what I'm supposed to do as an artist, which is to let my imagination infuse something into it that wasn't there before. That's how I like to work. And usually that's how I work with whichever artist that I work with. I'll kind of give them some basic parameters and let them go. And then we can tweak it after that if it needs to. And basically I just gave all of the artists a copy of the script and said, hey, just whatever sticks out to you whichever chapter, whichever monster that you want to illustrate, just go ahead and do it. And just let me know. Only thing I did was let me know ahead of time so we don't end up with, 500,
right.
10 of the artists all doing, one chapter, which we didn't. Different things stuck out to different people. So it was really good. So
your Kickstarter is ending soon.
Yes.
Is that right?
Sunday, the 10th. Yeah.
So it's in about 2 days. You've already reached your goal.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's a good, successful one. And if anybody wants to support it, let me place the link here for you. And you can check out the page as well. Now, you told us what the story is about. You decided to do this because you started gaining some success in re-releasing some of your old books.
Correct. Yeah.
Based on our previous conversation. And this book is being released as a novella. Is there a physical book or is this strictly digital? How's that working?
Yeah, no, there's a physical book. There's a digital version, PDF. There's also a physical book. There's a soft cover and a hardcover edition. Both very nice, 48 pages, full color. Now that we've, I believe since I've started Kickstarter, I've published, I'd like to say about 10 or 11 books. So, I've been able to get my feet wet again and kind of get very familiar with the current publishing environment, printing and so forth. So the book will be very, very nice. The book will look really nice. People will really, really like it. We also have sketch cover editions. If anybody sees an artist that they really like, that they would like that artist to create a sketch cover edition for them, that's also available in the Kickstarter.
Yeah, if you can explain a little bit what a sketch cover is in case we have anybody in the audience who does not know what that is.
Okay, a sketch cover is the cover of the book itself is printed on actual artist Bristol board. And you can buy a individual copy and you can have an artist, either one in the campaign or at some later date, draw an image for you directly on the cover. It's a one of a kind item that's very popular in the comic industry. Marvel, DC, us, everybody's doing them. We did sketch covers way back in the 90s. Mm-hmm. And now they're very popular because
you have an original piece of artwork literally on your comic book.
Yeah, on your comic. And the big companies do them now, but believe it or not, we were doing them a good long time ago.
Okay. Now, I have Heidi on the audience, and let me open up the seat, and we can interview her quickly. And Heidi, if you want to hit the open the seat button. Very good.
Hey, Heidi.
Hello.
Oh, Chippa. I think she had a little bit more wine than I expected.
Yeah, right. There she is.
Or is that blood?
Right. Or is it
I'll
blood?
never tell.
Right. Well, hey, I can tell you who Heidi is. Shall I introduce her? Or
please, that'd be great.
Okay, so Heidi actually started out as a backer of one of my Kickstarters. I think it was the 8 LUXURA.
The 20th anniversary Kickstarter.
Exactly. Heidi was a backer in the 20th anniversary LUXURA Kickstarter that I did.
Oh, wow.
And at the time, she was also working for a online show called Pulpcast, I believe.
Yep.
And she was the booking agent for Pulpcast. So she had contacted me and said, hey, I really liked your book. I like your character. Wasn't familiar with it. Would love to get you to talk about it on Pulpcast. And so I came on Pulpcast and did that. And then Heidi had sent me, I think, a message. she just said some stuff about LUXURA and so forth. And I said, oh, wow, that's interesting. You really kind of get the character. So I said, I'd be very interested to know what you think about the LUXURA stories, because believe it or not, to me, getting feedback from female readership is like gold.
Absolutely.
Which is, yeah, it's something that we had back in the 90s when we were publishing, is that I began to notice, because when I was making the original comics, I was expecting just all guys to come up to me all the time.
Well, she's hot.
Right, yeah, oh, she's hot. But when we started publishing the comics, we would be at conventions, and it was really surprising to me how people from all walks of life, and a lot of female collectors. I remember one retailer was telling me, yeah, he owned a store, and he said, yeah, my wife doesn't read any comics, but I have to bring your comic to her every time it comes in.
Nice.
And so whenever I've had the opportunity to speak with a female reader, I was asking questions. What do you like? What's good? What's not good? What kind of turns you off? And or where do you think the strengths are? And so I kind of wrote something up like that. And I said, hey, Heidi, if you get a chance, read over the stories and tell me what you think. Well, Heidi read everything and sent me back these very detailed notes, which, were really, really good. So at the same time, I knew I was working with the project with David, and I was like, well, hey, this is kind of cool. You might like this. And so talked to Heidi, and Heidi became what I call our continuity editor.
Yeah.
Since she was very familiar with LUXURA's history, with the stories that were already done, I was like, okay, well, can you read this over and just make sure everything lines up in case there's something that I miss? And so we went from there, and it only helped to make the project better. Our editorial team for the, you deserve it. You did a lot of good work.
Thank you.
But our editorial team is myself, David, Heidi, and also Paul Schleicher, who he's kind of my managing editor, my art editor. He kind of helps me make sure that I keep all the promises I make to everybody of what they're supposed to get and everything. So it's like, and getting all the information, addresses for, the artists and everything like that, making sure that they get everything they're supposed to get. Paul actually worked for me when I first got into comics. For Personality Comics, he was actually one of my managing editors there. So he understands the comic industry really well. He's worked with artists before. He's worked for other publishers in the same capacity. So I was able to get him on. But that's a little bit about them. But yes, Heidi's our continuity editor. She also helps with the spelling and grammar. Which,
yeah, she helps me with that too.
Yeah, okay. We all owe her a little bit. She's a good.
Yeah, sometimes the Facebook posts, I read them and I'm thinking, oh, typo, autocorrect is just not your friend.
Yeah. I hit the post button too fast sometimes.
So Heidi, let's just ask you a few questions if that's okay.
That's fine.
So tell us a little bit about yourself. Now, you guys are all located in different locations.
Yes.
So
Yes.
You're in Pennsylvania, is that right?
No?
Who?
Kirk.
No, I'm in North Carolina.
North Carolina. My bad. And then Heidi she's in Tennessee.
I'm in Chattanooga, Tennessee.
Very good. And I am not.
No,
so,
you're not.
Yeah, Paul's in New York, and David is in. Gosh, where's David? Where's David? I don't know.
He's on a plane somewhere.
Yeah, I don't know where David
now,
is.
Rob is doing our slideshow. Thank you very much, Rob. If you want to continue with the images, now we can kind of just go through them one more time. And Heidi, so tell us a little bit about yourself, Heidi.
Okay.
A little bit about your background and how you suddenly became this editor.
Well, like Kirk had explained earlier, I became aware of his the 20th anniversary Kickstarter through a mutual friend of ours, Everett Hartsoe. And I looked at the Kickstarter and I was very intrigued by the character because I hadn't seen anything like her before. I was fairly new to comic books. I mean, I'm, familiar with the classics, DC's Batman and Wonder Woman and all that, and even the Marvel characters. But but I really took an interest in independent stuff when I started working for Pulpcast. So like Kirk said, I became a backer, and I contacted him to do an interview with Pulpcast, and just in conversations trying to get Kirk actually booked on the show, trying to get a date that worked for both of us, I made an offhand comment that I tend to edit when I read stuff. And so that started a conversation, about that kind of thing. And he asked me a couple questions, and he's like, would you mind, sending suggestions or reading the stuff and letting me know what you think? So I did, and flash forward 2 years later, and Kirk is like, I want you to, to be an editor with me. And I'm like, that's fabulous. Yay. More LUXURA stories. And when I read this one, I instantly fell in love with it. The fact that they've brought in the classic horror movie monsters, I thought was really, really cool. And I'm a fan of horror, and I love vampires, so it was a plus for me. And it was very easy. The way David wrote this story, it made it very easy to get visuals of the different characters and even different things that were going on in the story. And my job basically is to make sure that things stay consistent. And we've had a few inconsistencies, which we dealt with early on. But making sure that LUXURA herself and some of the other major players don't act out of character is really the easiest way to put it. And that if something is mentioned in this story, like about a past event, it has to match the past event. So, spelling and grammar checks and that kind of thing are very important, but you need to make sure also that everything flows real well. So that is
like if she doesn't smoke and then an artist draws her smoking, you don't want to have that happen.
Well, if a character doesn't smoke and then all of a sudden lights up a cigarette, you're going to be like, what? That doesn't make sense.
We just got a new backer on the Kickstarter.
Yay! That's awesome. Yes, that is so awesome. So, yeah, basically my job is to make sure everything makes sense, and not just with the current stories, but they make sense in conjunction with previous stories. And, even going forward and with future stories, it'll be the same thing. You don't want to have things that don't match up, because fans that are longtime fans pick up on even the smallest inconsistencies or smallest issues. So, you want to make sure that the fans are happy and don't go into some outrage over something that you may have thought was insignificant, but is actually important to them. And, right. It helps with newer fans too. But working for Pulpcast was actually my entry into the world of comics, and I love this world, and I love that I've been given an opportunity to use the skills that I have to help, Kirk and anybody else that, I may end up working for. And I dabble in writing myself. I have a few stories that I'm working on, although everything is in the...
Have you read anything that she's done, Kirk?
Only small snippets, not an entire thing, yes. But yeah, small snippets.
Well, and I did send you the intro to the visual that I had from the music. So, but eventually, hopefully I'll do more writing of my own. But yeah, right now I'm just super excited to be working with Kirk and seeing all the awesome LUXURA stories that we can come up with, and even the artwork has been
Kirk,
blowing me away.
But I don't know if you know this, Kirk, but Heidi sometimes moonlights for the lounge.
Oh yes, I do.
So I think that's how we got connected.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. She had contacted me to do your show. Yep.
Yes, I do occasionally help line up interviews for Carlos. So you're welcome.
You're doing a good job.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now, so Heidi worked on this project, and she also brought in to build this campaign, her son.
Yes.
Right? So let's roll the drums and bring Ori, who is has been gracefully watching, and get him on board. And so Heidi, I'm going to kick you out if you don't mind.
Okay. No, I'm good.
All right. And I don't drink too much wine.
Good to see you too, Kirk.
All right.
So here we go. All right, Ori. Let's get this taken care of. Mm-hmm. Hey, Rob, can you take out Heidi? Because for some reason my browser is giving me an issue.
Do you want me to take myself?
We got this covered.
I think she just.
All right.
Like,
now I'm having some issues on my browser. All right, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can anybody hear me?
Can y'all hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Can y'all hear me?
All right, so Rob, if you can do me a favor and pause the recording, I'm gonna have to refresh my browser.
This is
Yeah,
perfect.
it is pretty cool.
I've actually.
Awesome. Well, hello, Ori. Welcome.
Hello, Carlos.
And it's really cool and a bit of on the Kickstarter is very sweet.
Thank you.
Now I'm gonna play just a touch of it,
Yes.
so we can just hear it.
I have a monster right here.
Alrighty. So now what's really cool,
Hey, hold on, no, you got to give the man.
yeah, very cinematic, dude. It's really awesome.
Yeah.
I'm obsessed with score music. Actually, one day I really hope to meet like Hans Zimmer and
Oh yeah.
I can't remember his name, but the guy that scored Maze Runner. Favorite, my favorites.
So now, well, when your camera's a little bit tilted down, I don't know if you want to.
Like, there's no way to fix that. I'm sorry.
All right, no problem. Okay.
It's just like a small little cube that I have. One of those little Newton ball things that, like, I don't know, it's supposed to show physics. That's the only thing that's holding it up.
Okay. Now, when did you start doing some music, Ori?
I started doing, well, music in general. I started in middle school. I played violin in my middle school's orchestra for 6th and 7th grade. And I would always annoy the teacher because I would also want to go on the piano and press the keys and see if I was good. And eventually, after I moved to Richmond, Kentucky, which is where I live now for 8th grade and the rest of freshman year, I went to piano because there was piano lab and there wasn't an orchestra. So I know violin, piano, and then a few years ago I started to get into recording my own stuff because I would see like behind the scenes videos on artists like Rihanna and stuff and see what they would do in the studio. So I was like, oh, I want to do that. So I would look at like what softwares to get and what was free because I was a child. I didn't have money at the time.
I hear you.
We've all been there.
Yeah. I got some free stuff and I just learned how to record with horrible microphones and learn how to make them sound better. Then eventually, after graduating high school, I went to Nashville, Tennessee, and I actually went to school for audio engineering and music production. And I got to meet a lot of people. I got to make some connections who were just waiting for me to get back there because I plan to move there again. And
Very cool.
Yeah. I actually got to meet Brad Whitford, and if you don't remember that name, he's the rhythm guitar or was the rhythm guitarist for Aerosmith, and my class got to record his son's band and got to meet him. So that was really cool. He just walked him into class like expecting no one to notice. I'm like, you're Aerosmith. Like, we're gonna notice you.
Now, let's see. So you, at some point you got introduced in terms of this project.
Yeah.
Oh, no, give me just 1 second. We have a Blab member who is very popular on Blab. I wanted to bring him in and say hello really quickly.
Hello.
Hey guys.
Hey, Ricky, how are you now? Ricky Prime is like the king of Blab.
What's up, Ricky?
So he rules this kingdom that we're environment that we're in, and and he's got a great following, and he's a great guy. He's out in New Zealand, and he's going to be coming to the United States in about a week, which is fantastic.
Yeah. What's up, Rob?
So
yeah, I'm coming 3 days, bro. 3 days. I'm actually in another store picking up on a shirt, getting ready for a wedding tonight.
awesome.
We have fans in New Zealand, believe it or not.
Just thought I'd come in and say how's it. Everyone was like, got to come and say how's it to Kirk. So here I am.
Yeah, nice to meet you, man.
So Kirk is the creator of a comic book. If you want to watch just a little bit of a character called LUXURA.
Okay.
And it's a female vampire character, and it's fairly popular.
Oh, I can imagine.
So we're doing it.
Female vampire.
And so he's doing a Kickstarter project, and we're just kind of introducing it to everyone.
Yeah. It's a lot of
awesome,
fresh people coming in, eh?
Yes, I do appreciate that. You know, you got the following, Ricky.
Yeah,
it's all good.
Hopping in, man.
I better go because I got to go back to my work, and my phone's gonna die. I got this wedding.
Well, if I don't speak to you, man, have a safe flight. Much love, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks for stopping
3
in,
days,
Richard.
guys. 3 days, guys. Peace out.
All right, later.
Well, I appreciate that. So anyway,
Yeah, it's cool.
a little cameo. He came in, and it was very kind. So you got introduced to this project, and so what was your
a lot of it had to
feelings
do
in terms
with
of how you
because
came
I
up with the music?
Part of the Dropbox, I was able to see all the artwork that was created for it, which was really amazing. I mean, whoever's responsible for picking like all the artists did a wonderful job. If that was you, Kirk, props to you. They did phenomenal. They did phenomenal. And
Yeah,
I've always
good guys.
I've always been a visual person, and you can ask my mom. I don't read hardly anything, but one thing that I do read. One of the most like exclusive things I read is stuff about werewolves and vampires and all the dark and mysterious stuff. And looking at all the images and artwork that was made for it helps me kind of not learn the character. I learned the character from reading the manuscript, kind of, and my mom sent me a chapter. I don't remember what chapter it was, but I remember reading it, and I got to learn how of a strong woman she was, but also kind of very mysterious, and she didn't really show her less aggressive side much. So when I was making Dark Journey, which I'd already I was already working on that before I was asked to do this, but this actually helped me finish it because I was able to kind of, like I said in the spotlight, I used certain instruments to convey certain emotions, and then for both songs, as it built up towards the end, it would basically kind of change emotion, especially with Wrath of the Vampires, because it has a tempo change. But there's Wrath of the Vampires right there. Yeah. But
yeah, that, by the way, when Ori had sent me that Wrath of the Vampires, because he did the first one, and I was like, oh man, that is great. That would be the kind of the theme when she's traveling from one borough to the next to face, it's like the next champion that she has to confront. And as we were going through, I was like, man, that's really good. I was like, I wonder if he could kind of do something with okay, now LUXURA's angry because as this goes on, there's something that happens in the story that she finds out a little bit of the treachery that's going on. And he sent that one, and I was like, I put it on MP3. I had it in my car. I was like, man, this is good. It was. And to me, every time when I look at the video on Kickstarter, to me, it looks like the opening credits for like a TV show. It really just, the music just has that feel to it. He
Absolutely. Basically, it sounds like we're not going to be reading the comic. We're going to be reading just a movie.
elevated cinematic feel to it. And I mean, if that's the type of music that you're planning on getting into, or you have a talent for it. I mean, absolutely.
Thank you.
You
Actually,
have a talent.
Thank you. I actually plan, this is kind of selfish of me, but I plan on being in music 100% in every genre possible, in every aspect, whether it's for video games or on the radio or for movies or for scoring comic books. Music has been, a lot of people say like I have a passion for music, but like I do, but it's more than that, because I'm very determined to get into that industry, because it's just more of a passion that I don't know what word to use because my vocabulary isn't that amazing. But
well, your vocabulary is in your music. You know, everything you need to say comes out there. Yeah.
Isn't it weird how sometimes I don't know, like sometimes you have those kids that kind of look, I'm not judging you, Ori, but you know, they kind of have this look of slacking, you know, hey, what are they going to do with their lives? Yeah, and then they come out with something like this.
Well, this is the first time I'm seeing him outside of Facebook, but I met him through his music, and I was just blown away. That Wrath of the Vampiress especially is, I mean, if there's ever a LUXURA movie and they use that, then I hope the royalties like make you filthy rich.
I'm okay with just a name on the credits. It's my name.
Well, so Ori. Well, I mean, I really hope you have luck on this. It's cool because the music for those who are watching was made for the Kickstarter project. So it's not like it's going to be used for a feature film or anything like that. And yet he did this amazing job with music, and it's really awesome. So so I wish you luck in the future, Ori. I hope you find more projects for commercials and all that type of stuff, because most of the shows that I do are with musicians, and the key is to find how to make money outside of worrying about some kind of
a lot of freelancing stuff with friends or people that I meet, and I record covers that they want to do for YouTube or EPs. But one thing that I'm really excited for is on January 23rd, I'm going to be auditioning for The Voice. So there's that.
Oh, awesome.
What?
Announcement, yeah.
So what song are you going to sing?
Announcement.
Well, for the there's 2 preliminary auditions before the one you see on TV.
Uh-huh.
So, and you have to pick 2 songs, and I've chosen Matt Nathanson's Come and Get Higher, which has been one of my favorite romantic songs since I heard it like several years ago, and Rolling in the Deep by Adele.
Oh, okay.
And I actually have a cover of Rolling in the Deep on SoundCloud, which is, I believe, linked on Kickstarter or something. It's linked there. And
yeah, we put it in your Spotlight page. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We'll cover that on there so people can know what to expect.
Cool. All right. So Ori, we're going to start kind of bringing down the interview, and I appreciate you coming through. Awesome that you were able to kind of meet each other and see each other, and that's what I love about Blab. It's it's one thing to do like conference calls and stuff, but look at this. So
I did.
It's funny because I actually put on makeup.
Yeah, me neither. I'll have to know for next time.
All right, so it looks like one of the artists is here.
Great, Jesse. What's up, man? Is that Jesse?
And it's Jesse. So,
all right, I'll join Mom.
So, Ori, I'm gonna kick you out if you don't mind. I hate using that word, but that's kind of what it is. All right, and Jesse, thank you very much for coming through. If you want to click on the open seat so we can see you and talk to you and do a quick little interview.
Jesse's not Spanish.
If you want, I'll say it in español. Por favor, Jesse. I don't know any other languages. Oh, you don't have a camera set up. Do you have a microphone? Do you have a microphone on your computer, or do you have a smartphone? If it's an iPhone, you can download the Blab app and then join the room.
Is Blab on Android yet?
Okay. It's not on Android yet, although some will use a browser and it does work. So
Jesse has
kind of depends on the model of
iPhone,
Android
so
you
he
have.
can do iPhone,
But,
and then maybe come in. So we'll hang around for a little while, I guess.
Cool.
Well, I'll tell you. Okay, I'll tell you
Yeah.
who Jesse is a little bit.
All right.
Jesse's well, when I met him, he was local.
great.
He was in North Carolina. What happens is we both go to the same comic store, and I've been going there forever, and I don't know how long he's been going there. But I was at one of the free comic days, and usually a free comic day. My good friend Bernie, he's always got, you know, anybody who's an artist, he'll try to get them there, whether they're professional or, you know, aspiring professional. A lot of guys will volunteer to do sketches for charity. So I was there, and I saw Jesse drawing,
Right.
and I saw some really nice drawings in his that he was doing for fans there. And then I believe he had his sketchbook, and I was like, man, you're really good. You know, you can really draw, which, you know, any artist can always spot another artist who can draw well, even if it's not finished, if it's not, you know, because there's all sorts of formation lines and things like that, that when you see an artist that really is kind of doing their stuff, you can spot it. And based on what I saw in Jesse, I was like, man, you're good. You can draw. And the first thing that he did for me was he colored a LUXURA image for me that was actually used for one of the covers for the LUXURA 20th anniversary collection Kickstarter. And he did an awesome job, really, really great job coloring it, put a lot of great stuff in there. And I knew that at some point in the future, if something that I work on pops up where I would have some artists and wanted to work with some artists, that I would give him a call and see if he was available. And I was lucky he was. And he was able to do a really nice job.
Well, that's very cool. And that's his image with, he's coming on board. Very good. Now, Rob, it is.
Hey, here he is.
I think it's the first image on your
Hi, guys.
slideshow that
up,
has
bro?
a Wonder Wheel. And
Okay, great.
how's it going, Jesse? Yeah, we do hear you.
Thanks for having me.
What's
Awesome.
up, Jesse?
Welcome.
Good to see you, man.
And welcome to
Yeah, you too.
I'll let you.
This is pretty cool. I've never. Oh.
Oh yeah, this is new, buddy. I'm top of the line, right at the edge. All right. So yeah, keep going, Rob. And we're just trying to see if we can pull up your
there he is,
image
right there. You just missed it.
Right
that
there.
you worked on.
Yeah, there you go.
That we have there. That's the one. There you go. So Jesse, thank you so much for coming on to Blab and onto the Artist Alley show from the Lounge Network. And so Jesse, he was just explaining how you guys met. What's your
From
side
what
of
I
the story?
heard, I was trying to get my camera situated. It was pretty much the same thing. I met Kirk at it was a free comic book day in Fayetteville, North Carolina, and I was just that was actually my first free comic book day of like sketching ever, and Kirk had happened to be there promoting.
Oh, wow.
It was LUXURA, wasn't it? It was a
Yeah.
it was. So you know, I talked to him, and I do remember seeing his character in the 90s before, and I just didn't know that was him that did it. So it was kind of shocking to actually meet the guy behind the character. So it was nice, and I remember we hit it off pretty well, and kept in touch with each other. And I can't remember how long ago, maybe a year or two ago, he asked me to color. I guess it's I believe it was a variant cover of some sorts. He had already done the inking on it and everything. He just wanted some colors on there, so I threw some on there, and I guess he was satisfied with what I did, because you asked me for another one, didn't you? How's that?
Just technically, he's
Was
not
that-
here. You can.
Oh.
Right. I'm
Just
nowhere
make believe
around.
he's not
Yeah,
here.
so we had he had asked me to do that, and then fast forward to late last year, he had proposed to do an original piece for his Kickstarter that that's going on right now. So I'm currently working on another book, but I really wanted to make time to do something for this, because Kirk would. I made a post when Kirk started featured me on the Kickstarter. I really do appreciate Kirk's involvement with kind of the start of my career. I've I've always wanted to tackle the comic book industry, and Kirk was one of the first people to kind of plant the seeds to inspire me to get into it. So
Yeah.
oh,
Now, Jesse, before you continue, if you can lower your volume on your speaker, 'cause I
okay.
think it's picking up and it's
Do you hear a whistle
apparently it's
or
squealing.
something? Okay.
I think
Something
that's
like that,
why
yeah.
it's probably good to use the headphones.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Let me see if I have that.
Let me mute him.
Yeah, teapot.
It's a teapot. Is it? No, it's not a teapot.
Okay.
I don't
gone?
think it's a teapot.
Yep, it's gone. Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, so yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's great.
Where was I? Oh, yeah, but yeah. Kirk, thanks, man.
Yeah, anytime, man. Anytime. I know exactly what it's like of a young guy looking to do comics. Everybody thinks you're crazy. What do you want to do these
Oh,
comic
yeah.
books for? But
Yeah.
and Jesse's
So that's great
good.
that this is
Jesse's
like
very,
the
very
beginning of a
good.
career.
I think it was a
opportunity for you.
Wolverine story
Um,
that you had at that time back in Free Comic Day, if I'm not mistaken.
It was probably it's just a 3-page sample script that I still
Yeah.
have.
But
for the
it was
X-Men.
there was some good stuff in there. There was some really good advanced drawing in there. So someone who's really trying to get it right, and that's kind of what stuck out in my head when I saw it. And like I said, I knew at some point in the future, if I have something that pops up that I can work with him, I would love to work with him. I think Jesse's going to do some really, really cool things. You are in another Kickstarter, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Actually, mine ran early last year. I believe in March or April. I think it was April. It's for the comic book that I'm actually currently working on. It's called Ghost Town. So if you go on the Kickstarter and you search Ghost Town, there's only two. There are only two results, and only one of them is about the comic. So you can see what it's all about if you go to Kickstarter and search for Ghost Town. But yeah, our Kickstarter was it was successful too. We had surpassed our amount. And very happy with that. So now we're just working on it. Yep. Yeah, no problem.
Very cool. Well, I do appreciate you coming through. Kirk, I think we're going to end it up. We pretty much are at an hour. And I'm glad that we were able to kind of cover everybody, including at least one of your artists that are contributing. And is there anything else you want to let us know about
it's still ongoing.
the
It'll end on Sunday, and it's an excellent book. You'll love it. It's got some great art. It's got a great story, and I actually have a small passage from it that I can read for you as we close out. All right, hang on. Let me put on my old
that'd be
man
great.
glasses.
Fantastic.
Okay, this is actually from the chapter that has the made men, the Frankenstein mafia guys. In the late 1930s, human history recorded that the 5 families created what is known as La Cosa Nostra, or the Mafia in Queens. LUXURA and many of the other supernatural leaders realized that it should be really 6 families. And that 6th family is the one that rules the entire organization. Despite Teflon Dons, Dapper Dons, TV Dons, and whatever flavor of the week the paltry might of the FBI is pursuing this week, the denizens of the dark know that the created are responsible for the mafia, and they run a tight ship. The Godfather himself, then known as Theodore, presented himself and a small party of men like him to LUXURA many years ago. At the time, the created were fairly new to the Americas and feeling their way along the periphery of the supernaturals. LUXURA recognized not only Theodore, but the creature's place in the pantheon, and was the first queen to grant territory to them in the New World. And that's a little bit of it, courtesy of David Hayes. Good
Nice.
story, good read.
I know it's an.
Yeah, he's on a
No,
plane.
he was.
He couldn't
Did you
make
speak
it.
to him about the show today?
Yeah, he's on a plane. He couldn't make it.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I did see that message. He could have just gone online on the plane, but anyway, not a big deal. Well, all right, guys. Well, the Kickstarter ends Sunday, and you've successfully made it by I don't know 3 or 4 times over, maybe even more, I think. And so I'm really glad that project has successfully met its goal. And now if my memory serves correctly, there's more to come from LUXURA and your stories, along with
Lots
your
more
group
coming your
of
way.
female characters. Awesome. So we'll be sure to catch up to even more stuff coming up, and hopefully we can have some
Yeah.
other guests
Good to
come
see
on
you,
board
Jesse.
as well.
Yeah.
And Jesse, thank you so much for coming through. I'm glad you're
Yeah, definitely.
I'm
Cool.
glad you're able to kind of get that app downloaded and stuff. And guys, thank you very much for watching, everybody in the audience.
You can find
Kirk,
us
how
on
can
Facebook.
people
Just go
follow
in there
you?
and search for Vampiress LUXURA, or search for Kirk Lindo, or you can catch us on, if you go to Kickstarter, you can just search for Vampiress LUXURA or Kirk Lindo. And my main website is vampiressluxura.com, and all of my social media is along there that you can follow along and become familiar with the character. And thank you, everyone who took the time out to come in and kind of check out what we had to say. I really appreciate it.
All right. And thank you guys. I know Blab is usually about marketing and all this other stuff that everybody does, but I wanted to throw in some creativity into the batch. And I'm gonna keep doing this. So there's gonna be more shows on Blab. Hopefully, I'll use Blab more often than I normally do my TV studio. But I think this is cool. If anybody, I'm gonna stop recording. If anybody wants to jump on board and say hello or have questions about books, it'd be great. So thank you, everybody who's watching on the website on theloungenetwork.com.
Ginger ale going on, or cranberry ginger ale, so we're good.
All right.
All right. So I'm going to make sure that I capture this. So I'm recording again.
Oh boy.
We don't want to not have your passage.
Okay. That's fine. Okay. This is actually, anybody that knows me knows I'm kind of freaked out by zombies. So I'm actually kind of surprised that I picked this particular passage, but I picked it because of the visual that it gave me. So let me scroll down to it and make sure I didn't lose it. Okay. LUXURA pushed forward. She knew that she had to make it through Brooklyn to Queens, and the most direct route would be to follow the King-Queens highway through, but that would mean getting away from the shore in Coney Island. She gauged that with her enhanced speed, she could make it to the border of Queens in 20 minutes. That is, until the shadows moved, and more importantly, the first sound since landing ashore floated through the salty air. Moans. Hungry moans. LUXURA stopped short. She took a defensive stance. The queen of the undead could smell them before she could see them. Most people, Kith, would simply chalk the stench up to Coney Island, the beach, the trash, etc. LUXURA knew the underlying smell. The sickly sweet odor of decay. They were here. From the darkness, changed at the neck to one another with a longer chain functioning as reins, a massive group of shambling corpses emerged. There were at least 50 or 60 of them. Those that still had jaws gnashed their teeth, and all of them pulled against their constraints, arms outstretched. LUXURA knew that the only thing driving them was an endless hunger for flesh, and she had no intention of filling that void. The zombies themselves were incredibly dangerous. Thanks to the machinations of the ghouls, these creatures were a communicable disease to mortals. Kith, like LUXURA, were immune to the disease, but in vast numbers that were possible, a plague of reanimated corpses could take over the planet quickly, even if all the supernaturals and naturals worked in concert to defeat them. Only the ghouls and their vow stood in the way of that. Much like right now, in the middle of Coney Island, only the vow of the ghouls controlling these creatures stopped them just shy of attempting to tear LUXURA to shreds. "Hold, LUXURA," a voice boomed from the darkness. The chain clanked, wielded from behind, and a group of 7 zombies stepped forward. In the moonlight, LUXURA could see that the zombies pulled a makeshift chariot. It appeared to be the car of an old carnival ride, pitted and rusted, but still painted enough to discern the lion and the clown heads on the sides. The wheels were mismatched and appeared to be off of some modern SUV or truck. Standing in the seat of the carnival, holding the chains that kept the zombies at bay, but also controlled the chariot team, stood a ghoul. If LUXURA recalled correctly, his name was Silas, and she had made him Duke many, many years ago. They had come full circle then. Oh, I just lost it. Hold on. So I'm so sorry. I want to skip ahead just a little bit. Okay. LUXURA, they began. In order to comply with the precepts of the gauntlet, you must face our greatest warrior in battle and prove victorious. LUXURA laughed. A single rotter? This should be over quickly, and she could be on her way to Queens in the domain of the created. So be it, she said. I welcome your so-called champion and will relish the thought of putting it back into whatever grave it crawled out of. The laughter was appalling. It came from all around LUXURA like sandpaper on glass. The ghouls were mocking her in unison. She suddenly got the feeling that things in Brooklyn weren't going to be as simple as she had just boasted. LUXURA, we know of your great power. We know of your skills as tactician and warrior. We know of your guile and seductive prowess, but you have no concept of what we are capable of. LUXURA stood her ground and looked from ghoul to ghoul, unsure of which one was speaking, but positive that they all wanted this gauntlet over and done with. We are far older than even you can comprehend, Vampire Queen, and have seen your kind rise and fall. For all of your vaulted powers, you have forgotten one simple thing. Bravely defiant, LUXURA asked, and what is that, corpse eater? That we have no single greatest warrior. LUXURA laughed out loud, not expecting that particular statement. Then you forfeit. Allow me to pass through Brooklyn, and after I reclaim my throne, I will have no reason to return here. You would not enjoy that. The ghouls laughed this time, led by Silas. We have no doubt of that, but you have failed to realize that we have no single warrior because we are as one. One mind, one goal, one hunger. With that, each of the ghouls turned the chains and pulled them free of the moorings in the carnival cars. As one, they stepped down from the chariots and quickly melded into darkness. LUXURA watched this happen, eyes wide in disbelief. If the zombie masters had just relinquished control of the chariot teams, that meant that they were upon her. And that is one of my biggest fears, is to be surrounded by a horde of zombies. So that was a very powerful passage for me. So
I just had to throw that.
There
music,
you go.
Underlaying music there. It was kind of cool.
Yeah, that was good.
All right, guys.
I'm sorry if that was too much.
No, it was great because it's a little bit of a glimpse of.
Don't give it away. Make them buy it. No.
Right, exactly. Oh, there's so much more.
Yeah, there's much more.
All right. So if anybody wants to come in,